Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a little early for me. I'm not a morning person, so you'll have to forgive any of my. I'm Joe Gerber. I am a broker with Engel and Volkers in Winnetka.
What was the brand name?
Engel and Volkers.
Okay.
I serve out of our Winnetka office and our Lincoln Park office. So I sell all over the map. Sold in 40 suburbs and 30 neighborhoods in Chicago. So I drive a lot, put a lot of miles on my car. I taught this presentation a couple months ago. It was a little bit different. So a lot of the questions that I got were more focused on maximizing your sphere as a way to build your business and less about actual marketing techniques. So I sort of drew it back a little bit. So it's still kind of all about the same things, but write down any questions that kind of you come up with during my presentation, and we'll have like 10 minutes or however long we need at the end for questions. Okay, so we all know that marketing in our business is really super expensive. The first 2 years that I was in real estate, I was a full-time college student. And I only spent about $750 in marketing in my first year, which seems like a lot of money at the time for me because I was 21 years old. But when you look at the cost of the things that we could spend money on, that's not a lot of money at all. A couple of examples just to give context. Generally speaking, a 12-month ad campaign or ad package for North Shore Weekend is about $10,000, right? A single page ad in North Shore Weekend is anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500, depending on the rate that your brokerage has negotiated with them. Another example are something I almost did. Those grocery store kiosks by the shopping carts. That was about $5,000 for 1 year. And if you wanted to follow in the footsteps of Andy Hausman, who I love, you could wrap your car, and that's probably about $1,500 to $2,500. So I was very cognizant of what I spent money on because there wasn't a lot there because I wanted to actually graduate from college. So marketing and building a brand, right, is all about creating a plan, right? Consistency is going to be key in anything that you try and do in our business, right? It doesn't matter how many listings you've had, how many sales you've had, or lack thereof, right? If you create a plan and you are consistent in the messaging, right? The brand, your brand is what's going to sell you, right? And your brand is going to be a part of this. So this is sort of my guide to how to create what I call a game plan, right? You need to identify your, and I'll go into detail about all of these.
Quick question, will your slides be available online to us?
Yeah, I can send them to Deborah, and she can send them out.
That way we don't have to take so much
Absolutely.
notes and be distracted.
Yes. This can be made available if you'd like it to be. So it's really important to identify your audience. For example, I'm in my 20s, right? So marketing to the senior homes with nobody that I know there, right? My grandparents are either in good health or no longer with us. So it's important that I figured out who is going to be the most valuable audience for me to be building a brand. Because the more you maximize, right, you maximize your reach. The way to do that is to minimize how many outlets you're reaching to. You don't want to have your hand in too many buckets. The second is but to do that, you also have to identify how do you communicate with the people around you, right? How do you communicate with your world, with your sphere, with your audience? We all communicate with those people differently. Some of us might use Instagram or Facebook. Some of us might actually use old school, writing letters and email, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we communicate with the people that are going to be most valuable to our brand and our business. Then the next step is you have to actually create a multifaceted plan, right? The best way to maximize your reach is to diversify your outlets, right? How are you reaching out to the people that you're trying to connect with? You always want to try and execute it for a long enough period of time that you can see the results, right? So usually I say you create two plans. You create one plan for the first 6 months of the year and you evaluate, and then for the next 6 months you see, did my improvements make a difference? Is it going the way that I expected it to? Is it productive and fruitful? After 6 months, you want to evaluate. That's supposed to say successes, not six. Can you pronounce that? You want to evaluate your successes, right? What are the things that worked? What are the things that might not have worked? And what are the things that worked, but we want to make them work better, right? Stronger. want to make the changes to the plan, right? So if something didn't work, or we want to tweak something, right? That's the moment where we sort of make the change. And then we do it for another 6 months. And then at the end of the year, you look at your plan and you say what worked and what didn't work, right? And I tie this to my business planning, right? So at the end of the year, when I look at my sales numbers from the prior year and I make goals for the following year, I'm able to take a look at what I did differently this year versus the prior year, right? I'm able to look at the percentage of growth in a given year and see, do I think that my plan for 2022 is the reason that my 2021 to 2022 percentage of growth was significant? Are there things I can do to make that percentage of growth more significant? Or if we're in a market like 2022 that sort of dropped off in a lot of ways for a lot of us, looking at what can I do even stronger, what can I do even better to make sure that that percentage of growth, which might have been a net zero, right? We might have just been able to do what we did the year before in a more realistic or a challenging market. This will help us be able to evaluate and create a much stronger, more productive business plan when we end the year and start a new year. So identifying your audience. The first thing is, right, is figuring out what are the outlets in which you communicate with the most people, right? For me, it's text messages and social media, right? I have a wide circle of people that are friends or acquaintances, right? Or who are close enough to me, maybe I'm not as close to them, but are close enough to me that they see what I have to put out there, right? So Facebook and Instagram, if anybody follows me on any of the social media, I use my Facebook and Instagram like a blog, right? I'm very open on it, I'm very authentic, and the people that follow me and the people that subscribe to that, they feel like they're close to me, even if they might not be. They feel like they are, right? And that's an outlet in which I communicate with the people that are probably the largest feeder of business for me. For some of you, it might be email. There's a lot of agents that place a strong importance on email marketing, right? Right, my grandparents email everybody in the world, and so does my aunts and uncles. So they're probably the most responsive to anything email that I send out. To some people, I'm going to pick on you, Sally. You used to teach classes for NAMI, so you have a lot of connections in a world that other people don't, right? So we always say that everybody knows probably a dozen of us who sell real estate, but diversifying who you sit in front of and who you put your face in front of is going to be what makes or breaks your success or the growth that you're seeking, right? I do a lot of work I teach at a synagogue in Glencoe every Sunday morning, and so I have a lot of students who just happen to hear in conversation when I introduce myself at the beginning of the year that I teach real estate. And I think in the last 5 years, I've had 2 or 3 emails from parents asking me to meet with them and see their house, right? That's for the 2 hours I spend on Sundays with their students for a school year, that's a pretty significant percentage of return for parents that actually haven't yet met me, most of them, and who live in a very connected small town like Glencoe. So that's a value. That's an outlet that I communicate with people. So it's really first focusing on who do you communicate with most, and how do you communicate with them, and then I encourage you to take those contacts. It doesn't have to be an exact science, right? I kind of do this in my brain, but your 3 circles, right? Your A team are all your immediate friends, your immediate family, and those friends and family that actually feed you business, right? Your referral sources, right? My best friend from high school, her mom's a commercial broker. I have never ever gotten a listing, her listing, right? Because she can sell her own property on her own, but she's been probably my biggest referral source when it comes to listings and buyers in residential, because she doesn't really do residential. So that's sort of your A team, right? Your B team is going to be acquaintances and people connected to you through those people, right? So, for example, that same friend's mom has referred me folks, and she's got friends, right, who I've met several times over the last 15 years. I've been friends with her family. I have those people in my B team. B team might be neighbors that live on your block that have, you're not super close with, but you see them on a regular basis when you're walking the dogs. if you live in a doorman building and you see your doorman every morning and every afternoon, he might be on your B team, right? People that are closer than strangers, but these are going to be people that are going to be long-term investments in terms of a relationship that you want to put your face in front of, and you want to be on the top of their mind more than your A team. And your C team is going to be most of the time past clients, right? And other industry, parallel industry referral sources, right? So if you have lenders you work with, they might have 5 other brokers or advisors or realtors that they give their business to, but you want to sort of do a soft campaign in front of them, right? Whether it's, wishing them a happy birthday, doing an event with them, taking them to lunch, right? This is sort of a long-term group of folks that you want to nurture the relationship, and it might take a while, but it's worth the investment, right? So attorneys you've used, maybe it's some of your kids' teachers, right? That some of the teachers that they've been closest to. Interestingly enough, I've had a few past teachers who have bought or sold with me or referred me to people to buy and sell with. So it's important that you identify, right, those 3 circles, and they change, right? My managing broker will tell you that every year you have to reevaluate your circles, right? She labels them differently, but the key is that every year when you sit down and you look at your plan, your business from the year before, and you're looking at the growth that you had or didn't have, and you're looking at the plan that you made, you're also going to want to reevaluate your 3 circles for the new year, right? Who do you want to add, right? Who might graduate from your B team to your A team, right? What neighbors do you know are going to sell in the next 2 years because their kids are grown? And you know that because you live next door and maybe your kids are the same age, right? If you have friends whose parents might be going into a retirement community, right? Or who might be graduating from their home that they've lived in for 50 years, right? Really think about the amount of people in your life that can be graduating from one to the other. Every year you want to reevaluate this. Actually, if you really are ambitious, you might want to reevaluate them when you change up your plan in 6 months, right? So when you look at your plan for the first 6 months, and then you get 6 months into the year, and maybe you see my C team isn't really fruitful, and it's been the same people for the last year. Maybe you want to switch that up, right? Maybe you want to spend your second 6 months with a different strategy and some more people to execute that strategy on, right? This is all testing, right? Every 6 months, every day, you do something different to build business, and it's all live and learn, right? You learn every day what to do differently, and all this is a guide for who to put that in front of. So the next step is, obviously we talked about this, multifaceted marketing plan, right? One thing is never going to be enough, right? But if you take the same objectives and the same people, you can do it in multifaceted ways, right? So let's say that when we talked about the outlets that you communicate with your people in, right? Let's say it's email, let's say it's Facebook, and let's say people in the community in your neighborhood, right? So now you've already got 3 ways to connect with people. Sometimes the same people, right? The key is to put yourself on the top of their mind every opportunity you can. I built my entire business almost on connecting with people that I know and postcards, monthly mailers. People probably never read any of them, but every month they saw my face and then they threw it in the trash. But they saw my face, right?
3 seconds.
Exactly. But that 3 seconds that I'm in front of their face in mail, and the 3 seconds they see me on Facebook, and the moment they see me walking my dog, right? Those are 3 moments where they're reminded that I'm their friend, I'm their neighbor, and I sell real estate. And I never had to go to them and say, hey, I sell real estate, let me sell your house. That's the key, right? So you want to figure out more than one facet, an outlet in which to market yourself to the same people. I use social media a lot, we talked about that, but more importantly, like I said, my social media I look at as a blog, and it's sort of an open book to the people that follow me. But with that, on the other end of that token, I see what people go through in their lives, right? So I'm able to send someone a message. Perfect example. I sold my friend's ex-boyfriend a condo 3 years ago. And for some reason, I just never followed up with him after the first year. this past Tuesday was the 3-year anniversary. So last night, I heard my managing broker in my head. I passed the building, I pulled over, and I sent him a text. I said, this week was the 3-year anniversary of us closing on your condo. Just checking in to see how things are. How are you? He wants to sell next month. I don't think he would have called me if I hadn't reached out. And if I hadn't and he did, I would have been lucky, but I didn't necessarily earn it. Right? That's a perfect example of how a simple reach out, because I saw that he's in a relationship with someone else and it's been long term and I just happened to keep seeing her face on his Instagram. It prompted me to reach out, and my reminder was also that I had sold his condo 3 years ago on Tuesday. Has anybody ever heard the 60-40 rule when it comes to social media? Okay, so I worked on a team when I first got my license, and her rule was 60% personal, 40%, oh, the numbers don't match up, ignore them. 60% personal, 40% real estate related on your social media. I'm going to tell you that forget that, right? You have to sort of figure out what works best for you. But when you're doing this sort of this year-long multifaceted plan that I'm talking about, you're going to want to change it, right? When you're deciding who to put yourself in front of, right? And this rule could exist for anything too, right? Not just social media. It can be when you reach out to people, right? When you're emailing people. I mean, social media is not the only way that we connect with people on a larger base, right? I mean, obviously, if you're sending them a postcard of a listing you sold, that is obviously inherently real estate related, right? But there are other ways we connect with people that don't necessarily have to be, right? So any way that you're connecting with the people that you've decided are your 3 circles that you're going to put yourself in front of, I would say that the first 4 months that you're doing this plan, you should have a 70-30 rule, right? Right? So you want to sort of begin making sure that they are more than aware that you sell real estate, in the off chance that they might not associate you with real estate, right? Somebody might know that you sell real estate, but they might not think of you, next door neighbor who has the cute dog that likes to play with my dog, also that you sell real estate, right? Maybe you don't have a ton of listings, right? Maybe you don't have a ton of listings in the neighborhood. They might just not associate you with someone who could sell their house or represent someone in the neighborhood that they know wants to buy, or their daughter who wants to buy in the city, right? So you want to make sure that you are using sort of that formula. And then I would do 60-40, right? Once you kind of get 4 months into this plan, right, people kind of know. And if they don't know, you're just kind of gently reminding them a little more than half the time when you reach out to them. And then for the last, few months, right, 9 through 12, right, if we're doing this as a 12-month plan, wow, my math was off on this presentation. 50-50. That's what we want to do, right? So we want to get to the point where any given day when you're reaching out to the people in your spheres, right, your 3 circles, that you are, could be a wash, right? One day you're like, oh, you know what? I toured the house around the corner and I know that you've been looking at maybe redoing your kitchen. I really think that I should take you to see that house or preview it for you, with you, because I think that kitchen might look really good in your house, right? Well, that's not quite real estate related, but it is, right? Both. You also, rule of thumb, at least 2 avenues to reach out to these people, right? So I always say more than 2, right? I say 3 or 4, right? So email marketing, social media, do something in the community, right? A good example is there's a colleague in my shop who lives in Wilmette and wants to sell in Wilmette and has done a nice job in Wilmette. So she maybe quarterly does door hangers, right? So she'll walk around the neighborhood, she'll knock on people's doors, and if they don't answer, she'll put a door hanger. If not, she'll hand it to them, right? It's just a picture of her and her kids, a little blurb about her, right? But that's a way for her to connect with her neighbors, right? And that is a direct way, one of the facets and outlets in which she's going to put herself in front of the people she wants to put herself in front of. I want to illustrate that if you do this really well, right? If you care more about the people and less about your success, the success will come with it. In 4 years, I went from 2 sales of $300,000 and 16 rentals to about $16 million last year. And I'm only sharing that with you. Thank you. I'm only sharing that with you because it's realistic, right? I've built my entire business on connecting with people, right? Working really, really hard to care more about the people that I want to interact with than the business I want them to give me. And I think that that's a really, that's a winning strategy in a highly competitive business that numbers matter a lot, right? You'll see 10 ads every weekend in North Shore Weekend that say, oh, $70 million, number one in X office, I sold all in this school district. But you also, that's great, and that's worth mentioning, but also you have to tell the story of how, right? Why? And why you, right? That's the other piece, is why you, right? There's 10 other people that have sold in your neighborhood in the last 12 months, 24 months. Why you? Especially if maybe you're new to the business and you've not sold anything in your neighborhood. That's the kicker, right? And that's where the personality and the commitment is going to shine much stronger than I sold your 5 neighbors' houses for 99.9% of this price and I did really well with multiple offers, right? That's great, right? You'll be able to say that one day, but really what's important is connecting with the person and saying, I love your house, I grew up next door, I watched your kids grow up with my kids. Like, people really care about that a lot more. So the top 4 reasons that realtors leave our business, right? One is they're not able to generate leads or to service their leads that they generate. The second would be they just find that they're not able to grow their network enough to create a fruitful real estate business. And the fourth is not really knowing their why, right? That's a really key piece to market yourself in any business, whether you sell cars, whether you sell, I don't know, plants, I don't know, whatever my great-grandfather, who I'm named after, was a door-to-door shoe salesman. And then he was a door-to-door carpet salesman, right? But part of why he was successful was he really liked what he did. But why do you like to do what you do, right? So it's important to know your why. My why can be summed down to one moment. When I was maybe 15 or 16, this was right about the time I got my first job in the industry working for a broker, mostly stuffing envelopes. We moved out of our house that I grew up in, and I stood on the front porch and I looked around and I was able to count 7 houses that went into foreclosure after the 2008 recession. That's about half my block. My house was one of them. So that was the moment where I was really, really aware of how much of a role and how important a role that we play in someone's search for home, right? And in that moment, how impactful the realtor that we had was in that transition that wasn't expected and definitely wasn't wanted, right? That's my why, right? So that's why I do this and why I like to do it well. And that's also why I care more about the people I do it for than what I do for them. So it's really important for you to figure out what's your why, right? Why do you do this for a living? And it changes over time, right? I live alone with a dog. I don't have kids, right? So yes, I support myself with doing this for a living. Maybe in 5 years or 10 years, my why is a little different because I'll have a kid or I'll be married, right? Or I'll own a house. I don't own a house right now. So it's important to be able to reevaluate your why.
Do you need a realtor?
No, I have a couple great ones. I'll add you to my list. But remember that.
I had to do it.
No, I was waiting for somebody to say that. Oh, okay. So I missed these 2. So there's 2 guiding principles in everything that you do in real estate marketing or marketing yourself to the world. Whatever it is the most important thing is to make sure that you're reaching out to people enough that you are on the top of their mind, right? When somebody says, when Glynis across the street comes over to Bob's house and says, my husband is passed and I think I really want to sell. I'm not sure if I know what I'm doing. You want to be the one that Glynis has the postcard or your name and she gives it, right? Or another example is if you're in the grocery store and you run into someone and they're like, hey, I remember, I need to sell my house. My kid's about to graduate high school. You sell real estate, right? You want it to be natural, that they think of you, right? And the most important piece of that is you have to stay in front of them. Because it's amazing how small the attention span is of the human brain in this way, right? If you miss a few months of connecting with the people around you, it's very quick that someone else swoops in and they're the first person they think of. And unfortunately, because of how our brains work, they could have known you for 15 years, but for those 6 months that you just weren't connecting with them for whatever reason, that would have been enough time for 2 other brokers, 2 other realtors to say, "Oh, I know you want to sell your house, hire me," right? So it's really important to stay in front of them any way you can, in all ways you can, at every moment you can. And then the other thing is, when I was in high school, I was on the student council, and there was a quote outside of the room that the student council met in that was one of our former teachers who I had never met. But he said, "Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care." You can go into a listing appointment with pages and pages of data and statistics about the market and their neighborhood and your business, right? But at the end of the day, that only adds as that is only supplementary to why people should hire you and why they should trust you with something that is an incredibly significant purchase or sale in their lives, especially when you're dealing with people who are not selling because of something that is happy, right? I work with a lot of estate sales. I come from a family of divorce. There's a lot of moments in our business where compassion is going to be the reason that you get some business over someone else. And when you don't always have the data of your own business to back up what you know you can do, this is a really valuable tool to use because people care about people who care. And that sometimes, most of the time in my experience, if you can show that you care and they know that you're at least competent in what you do, it doesn't matter if you sold $10 million in the neighborhood, because you're the one that came and really had a detailed plan and you're invested in the sale, not just because you're going to get a check at the end, and not because you're going to have a sign in the neighborhood, but because you really give a sense to the seller or the buyer that you care about them, and it's not just a transaction, right? So that was a little quicker than I thought it would be, but a couple little takeaways that I always like to share, right? The first is, whenever you feel like there's a barrier in front of you, the only thing stopping you from jumping over it is yourself. I've believed in my life, and I believe wholeheartedly, that even if you need a little help from other people, there's nothing that you can't accomplish, right? You just have to have the right people around you, the right coaches, the right mentors, the right support, if you can't do it yourself. But everybody can be successful in a business. That's a non-negotiable. If you can connect with people and you can understand that gray paint doesn't go with blue carpet, you can pretty much make something of yourself in this business. It's challenging, but it's not impossible, and it just takes a lot of hard work. But once you put in the hard work, you see it come back to you. It's one of those fields where we don't get a salary, right? So it's easy to feel like you're not getting that return. But it's important to, just like when you're going to present to a client and not come from this is all the volume I do, you also have to look at each transaction and not feel like you can't do it because you didn't make as much money, right? Or you're not seeing the income come in. It's a long-term investment into a business that will take some time for you to make something of. But you make so much more than money in what we do that it's really easy to feel successful even when it's tough, because you're doing good and you're making people happy. Be mindful of the language you speak of in your head. It's amazing how many people think that the people in our communities are asking me, well, the market's crashing. I'm not going to buy right now. I'm not going to sell. Nobody's going to buy my house. I went to an open house in Buffalo Grove last weekend with a client who was just sort of casually looking. There were 46 people in this townhouse, inside and out, while I was there. They had multiple offers, and they only started showings during that open house. I walked in 20 minutes into it. They already had multiple offers. There are buyers out there. There are sellers waiting for you to go and talk to them and say, well, you know what? It's what you think isn't true, right? There's demand. There's no inventory. But if you don't answer the language that they are saying, right? If you don't counteract their their perspective, right? Or if you let yourself believe, well, this year is going to be hard. I think I should maybe just go get a part-time job, right? Or this year is going to be hard. Maybe switching to another brokerage is a better idea, right? If you stick to what you've been doing and you just work a little bit harder and you speak language that in your head, you'll start to believe what you say, right? Same thing on the other end. If you don't think you can do it, you're not going to be able to do it. And it's hard, it's easier to say it than to do it. But every day you wake up, it's a new opportunity to believe that you can do it. And if you believe you can do it, you'll do it. And then the last thing is, don't look out the window to compare yourself, right? Look in the mirror to grow, right? It's really easy in our business to look at the realtor that sits next to us in the office, or the people in our office that might be more successful by conventional measures of success, and think, I have to be them or I'm not successful. Well, you're never going to be someone else. If you keep trying to be someone else, you're just going to feel like you're just setting yourself up for inevitable failure, right? Or inevitable disappointment. So the idea is to create your own identity, right? And measure success in however you feel you're successful in, right? I felt for the first few years of my business, where I did a ton of rentals and a lot of little deals, right? My measure of success was when I walked away from a closing or a final walkthrough at a rental with a big smile on my face, and my client had one too, I felt successful because I made a difference and I did my job really well. And that is really all that I think measures success in our business. Any questions? Yes.
Certainly consistency is the key. Mailings, postcards, emails, whatever your medium is. Do you have any thoughts on ad specialties? So for instance, my thing for the last 25, 30 years is I like to send a calendar. Now, most people don't use paper calendars anymore, but a lot of my base is 80 years old and better than putting doctor's appointments on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worked over the years. It's prompted people to look at me. What else would you send? And especially because the mail has gotten so expensive that you can't even send packages without them being about $3 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you send? Postcards are good, letters, emails. Would you any thoughts? The bottle openers.
So when you send calendars, are you sending them under the assumption that someone's putting them on their fridge?
No.
Okay. Or hanging up on a wall somewhere?
They could. It's got a hole, but it doesn't have a magnet.
Okay. So the reason I ask is, some things work for us for a while, but sometimes we want to tweak it, but we don't necessarily want to just recreate the wheel. So if calendars have been successful for you, there are things that are like calendars that I think would be of value too. Like, for example, there's a lot of, here's a good idea. There's a lot of lenders I know that send out, like, Blackhawks, schedules, or White Sox schedules on calendars that go on fridges, right? If you if you gravitated away from big, bulky calendars that have been successful for a while, but maybe there's a subset of your business that it's not really working for, what if you did something like that, right? Like a calendar that is a magnet, but you had important numbers or phone numbers or information for your clients, right? You said that most of your clients are of an older age, right? So there are phone numbers and websites and contact information that maybe they want readily accessible on their fridge. And there's a calendar on it. So they might not be able to write their doctor's appointments on there, but you're accomplishing sort of the same thing and you're still providing value for them. That's one example, right? There's a lot of other ways to do it. I would just encourage you not to recreate the wheel. I would find a way to accomplish what you're accomplishing in a different way. So if it's just too cost prohibitive to send bulk calendars like you have been, or maybe you think that there's maybe a younger subset of your business, of your clientele, that might not be seeing as much value as they did once before, find another way to send sort of the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because people are going to associate that with you, right? and it's provided value to people before.
I mean, because a lot of things get just kind of lost in the shuffle. How often do you read the pen that you picked up? How often do you go in your drawer and you're opening a bottle and you're like, oh wow, home inspector, the little house logo.
Another example might be some sort of personalized pad of paper for the fridge with a pen attached to it, right? People write. I mean, I keep grocery lists, right? And it has your name on it, and then you have a pen, right? Does anybody else have any ideas for him? Yeah. Wait.
Just a thought, and some of you might know this. One of my fellow speakers is Brian Buffini, who talks about pop buys. Has anybody been to Brian Buffini? So you know what I'm saying. You're welcome to explain it. But little things that show up on a regular basis: identity, consistency, uniformity. And I think a lot of the people I train that have done that show me the success of it. And you've got some people that actually are doing it. Maybe they want to share their thoughts, but I think that's really the secret to success is the identity, the consistency, and uniformity. So I think of it as I see you, now do you see me? And something else that's working big around the country are billboards again. Seeing a lot more agents putting up billboards for the consistency of quick think of a realtor.
From here to Kansas City, driving there last month, I don't know how many realtors I saw on billboards and how clever a lot of them were, and they caught my eye. I've never been a fan of billboards before.
But I don't know, Joe, if you want to let some of those people share what they've
Yeah.
given out as pop buys.
Anybody else have some ideas on or pop buys or any sort of individualized things they put out there to their sphere or their client base?
The small notepads are inexpensive to mail. There's a website and looks like anyone, you're always looking for a pad of paper, pens and
Post-its?
not even a Post-its, like a small little with your logo on it, your name.
There's lots of different
Yeah.
size options.
Yeah, it really boils down to the thickness of it,
Yeah.
because then you're in
Yeah.
first class territory. Once it gets too thick, it's about $4 to send.
Is it gotten, I'm just asking, has it gotten you actual business?
Yes.
So then why are you changing?
Well, what I'm looking for, and this is why I asked the question, is okay. Every year around December, I send out my a letter that says thank you for thank you for thinking about me over 33. Even if it was someone I met 20 years ago, all of a sudden my calendar goes there, and they could be right for selling. When I've sent those calendars, I've had people call and said, I meant to call you. Thanks for the reminder. So I'm just looking at, I can't just do this one, in December, because there's 11 other months in which I don't get the business. So I'm looking for some, a hook here.
Yeah.
Well,
I can see value in the little magnetic list when it comes to like spring cleaning, maybe, right? Checklist or something like that. There's a lot of things that are adjacent to your calendar that you can send in the spring or the summer.
I think the key is the consistency. The research says 7 times a year you should be touching them somehow, someplace. So figure out the months that work best for you, and whatever it is, a little tchotchke. I used to send out crazy stuff, but if you're not doing it 7 times a year, that's probably not going to have the same effect because people forget. But 7 times a year, big difference. That's what I would recommend.
Ethan and then Karen.
Target.
Stand up all the way back. It's very well attended talk. So I have 2 ads. These aren't things that I send out, but I have 2 ads. One is at the Northbrook Port, right next to the movie theater, and I would only do it at the movie theater because it's a dying mall. One is right next to the movie theater. People see it, they take selfies with it, they send it to me, they get excited. And then I realized people don't see movies all the time, but people need to eat all the time. Water bottles and stuff like that. So I did it at the Jewel in Skokie where I grew up and do a lot of business, and even more people see that one. So it's right by the produce section, and people walk in and right when they go.
You're talking about those grocery store kiosks, right?
Yeah.
Was it the
It's
poster?
like an ad.
It's a kiosk.
One, so
Is it kiosk?
one is it's like a kiosk. One is the one at Northbrook Port is about 6 feet tall, and it's a sanitizing station. And then the one at Jewel is right when you walk into the produce section. It's like a hand sanitizer, but it's I'm standing there to greet you every time you go to Jewel. A lot of people see it. I pay $200 a month for each one, so I've had it for 2 years now, and I will probably keep it forever. I mean,
And you
I'm not getting clients hand over fist over it, but I'm getting a lot of recognition out of it. I'm staying top of mind with myself.
Which is just as valuable because he's still on the top of their mind.
So true, yeah.
Okay.
So along those lines, but going with what Wayne was saying, you know, it's all about top of mind. It's all about consistency. We do not, way back when I started, it was, did I get something out of this? In other words, what was my return on investment on this piece or this ad or that kiosk or whatever? That's how it used to be. That is gone, guys. There is no return on investment from any one thing. It's creating consistency so that you're building traction.
One might say multifaceted.
Multifaceted, but along the lines of what to think about and the 7 touches and all that, look at things that are happening in the world. Like March 12th, I think it is the Oscars. So what can you do around the Oscars? Everybody's interested in movies. They all watch movies. To your point, what can you do around that? Can you send popcorn with your label on it and say, enjoy this? Can you drop something by their house, like a popcorn thing with your label on it? Or, you know, just popping by and blah, blah, blah. Like, stop. Use the things that go on in the world to put yourself in front of them. They don't have to be expensive. You can go to Costco and buy an entire thing of popcorn little thingies that they can do for very little money. And then if you don't have time, hire a teenager to go drop it off with your label on it. You should do it if they're people you know or your past clients, but get them out there and just be in front of people on a frequent basis. Take advantage of the stuff that goes on around us. Be a little creative with, there's bubble bath day, there's chocolate chip cookie day, yesterday was pizza day. Would have been really fun in Chicago to do that one.
I know.
So think of all the things that are going on in our world and take advantage of them.
There's opportunities right in front of you. It's just how you measure what you use and what you see value in. And I definitely would agree with Karen in the sense that you're not going to be able to buy a newspaper ad package and say, I got 4 listings from this particular thing that I paid for. But what it does is it creates one more avenue, one more outlet in your multifaceted marketing plan to be in front of people. And one last thing. Don, what I wanted to mention was I think a really important thing that NSBAR has been trying to do, especially with Katie, our president, and I think this is a prime example of there is no harm in staying after and chatting with some of the people that have valuable input, right? I think there's this fear of collaboration when we don't belong to the same office and we don't our license isn't held in the same brokerage. And there are so many people here that probably have more value to this conversation in their own business than even me. So share numbers, sit down, go up to someone before you walk out and take them to coffee, right? I think it's really important that we remember that we're all in this together in a lot of ways, and you're all here because you want to grow your business and you thought I had something of value for you, but you also have something of value for each other is important for me to mention.
Well, while we were sitting here, I was actually thinking of what is the math, because it's easy to say I don't have the money to do the promotion that I need to do, but is there anything worse than knowing if you were aware of how many people chose someone else after you sold them the home, but then they chose a different realtor? What number does that look like? How many deals did you just lose because you weren't keeping in touch? And even if you are keeping in touch, are you keeping in touch the right way? So just sending a piece of mail or a newsletter or a thing is really not enough. You have an obligation to your business to put them on a calendar, a schedule, that you're calling your A, B's, and C's, however you want to call it, at least once every 3 months. It feels awkward because we're not in relation with them on a regular basis, but if you were to call them on a every 3-month basis and take notes and say to yourself, okay, that contact, I need to call them again in 3 months, you're way ahead of the pack. And I can't believe I just shared my best secret, but I really believe it's a contact sport.
Absolutely. Wayne.
I just want to share it because this ties in with yours and with hers. I just finished seminars in Phoenix, LA, and Houston. And I suggested the agents apply for a Wells Fargo credit card. 0% interest for 21 months. It's as simple as saying, I want an ad campaign. I want to get consistent. $10,000. 47 people called me since they got one. $10,000. They got to pay $300 up front, and they got 21 months to pay it back. If you can't make money over $10,000 in 21 months on an ad campaign that's consistent, pop buys, wow. Because most small businesses spend money to make money in your business plan. How can you not take $10,000 or $5,000 at $150? You can do a lot with $5,000 on a consistent basis. And
I also
obviously you're an
think
expert
that-
at doing this.
I also think that it's not that much money if you add up what you already spend money on that can be categorized as for business. Yes,
Remember, you're already paying a phone bill, so use it.
Mhm.
it's true.
Point.
And most of our phone
The
bills are
phone is your
unlimited to some degree
number
now.
one best thing, and I'm gonna tell you this, you don't all know, he's on the phone 24/7. 24/7, he is on the phone with somebody. And literally, he is always talking to clients, friends of friends, people who do. The phone is the best tool you have. Don't hide behind a screen.
Got it.
And the last piece of advice I'll give is, instead of looking at it, and this was one of the best lessons Karen ever taught me, was instead of thinking of it as a dollar that you're spending out of your pocket, think of it as an investment that you're making in your business. It's easier said than done, but I left my last brokerage and joined Engel & Volkers, and I had a very lofty, ambitious goal of what I wanted my business to look like. I wanted to start a team, and I wanted to have an unlicensed assistant. AJ is now my business partner, and I had a conversation with Karen about I can't afford an assistant. I can't afford to pay someone money that I don't have yet. And she said, but if you don't, you're not going to get the money that you don't have yet. You're never going to have it, right? And there are ways to think about the money you're investing, right? Instead of paying somebody by the hour, there are other ways you can pay them, right? Instead of having $10,000, Wayne's example is a great example for those of us who just need a little jolt to get started. There are a lot of ways to do this. You just have to change the way you're thinking, or reach out to the people around you who might have ideas on how to get started. Any other questions? Yes.
I think one of my hardest obstacles is dealing with millennials. I love them. You know, I get my kids' friends or my friends' kids coming in from the city, and I'm getting a little bit older. And I remember looking at my mom once saying, "Is she still working or whatever?" Like that sort of mentality. But I'm not successful in reaching out to them, and it is different. I send a gift, and I don't get anything. They don't really want to hang with their realtor after the closing, so I try different things of values. You know, yearly I put together like an investment on their thing. I do these touches. I've done Buffini with Karen. I've done it all, and they're not really into the pop buys. One of my neighbors just said, like, you gotta be careful. Like, you can't just like pop by people's places. Like, there's no voicemails with them. Forget it. Their messages say text me.
I know, it's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to convert to this, and I'm not doing that good.
Well, so what I would say is, are these clients that are millennials, even though they don't want to be your friend, right? They might not look at you as a friend, but are they receptive to you as their real estate professional, and do they keep coming back? Are they referring people to you? Do you see that happening?
So not as much as they're a tough group for me. I don't know what other people's experience.
Well, I also think millennial brokers are different, and they, me being one of them. And there's a lot of the mentality of people who sell, and the regionality, the regimens in which they think they sell in certain areas, right? So you're competing with a breed of broker that tells their friends, "I will sell anywhere for you." That might not be a value proposition as much as they think it is. But if you're seeing them connect with you afterwards, refer you business, or use you again, you're being successful in being their professional. Maybe you just take her to coffee or him to coffee and say, I have a significant business that's your generation. What would you tell me is a good way for me to continue to connect with my clients who are millennials?
Have a happy hours for them. They love it. Yes, they do. They do love it, and they get engaged, and
Also, I think if they're telling you text me, use that.
Mhm.
Text them. Send them a video clip. Hey, I was just thinking about you. I know you just bought. Spring cleaning is coming up. Here's a checklist. And then shoot them a checklist. Done. You're out. You know, and don't overthink it.
We hate the phone. Millennials, we hate the phone. Yes, we don't like to get on the phone. Yeah. But so texting is definitely, and social media, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is the way to get in touch with people.
For my birthday, Sally sent me a jib jab video
There you
of my
go.
face and a music video of a song. I've never laughed so hard in my life, and I was sitting there with all my friends. That was something that is not that hard to put together, and you don't even really have to put anything together other than give them a picture of whoever you're sending it to, and they put it on the face in this video. That's a really easy thing to send over text message.
I have found one platform that I have never seen young. I probably forward young from the city of Zenless.
Mhm.
I have never seen a platform of people interact, and I see how often they're on. Young millennials are on hourly. I used to send from the MLS searches, never opened. They went to their own. You know, I think it's one of the best platforms I've ever seen.
Zenlist is accomplishing now what Zillow did without the private listing network. And I will say a lot of things about my feelings about apps that put PLN listings out there publicly, but Zenlist did accomplish reaching a subset of people that really until today the Redfin app and the Zillow app were only able to do.
Right.
So if that works for your clients, use it. Send out a text to your clients or their families and say, hey, can I set you up on a search on Zenlist? And whenever you're ready to start looking seriously, call me. I mean, whether you like it or not, if it's something that works, use it.
What's your opinion on this private listing network?
I think private listings are supposed to be private. I think that they're not private if they're publicized to the consumer. I'm not saying that publicizing listings to the consumer is a bad thing. But on the other side of it, as the seller, I think that if you're signing a PLN authorization with your listing broker, it's not really private. Like, I feel like we're calling it private, it's not anymore, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, I'm just saying we're calling it something that it isn't anymore. But it works for people, it's valuable. And you know, if my clients were using it, I might rethink my not really using it, but my clients aren't really using it. But if it works for your clients, use it.
Do you use it, Jim?
I don't. But it's not because I don't not use it because of my opinion. I don't use it because my clients generally don't use it. I've never really had a client who says, "Oh, I saw this thing on Zenlist." Actually once, but then they hired somebody else to represent them and I was like, "Sure, go right ahead." For reasons unrelated to Zenlist. I encourage you guys to stay back and introduce yourselves to people that said anything of value to you. And I encourage you to lean on each other because this year is going to be a different kind of year. I'm not going to say it's going to be challenging. I think every year is challenging, but I think this is going to be the year where we really have to buckle down and figure out really maximizing our investment and figuring out who we want to be in front of more so than ever before. And I'm happy to be a resource as well.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joe. So I'm one of the co-chairs for the Education Committee, and this has been Katie, our president's real baby that she really wants to see this room full when we do this. So thank you for being here and supporting Joe, and let your friends and colleagues know that we have great content coming out of here on Friday Fuel. So,
when I taught this the first time, I had one person. This is a big difference.
That's right. Exactly. So, but what's that?
Every Friday?
It's not every Friday.
Right now, it's about once a month.
I think that's
But
what we are
if
right
you
now.
had something that you wanted to present in this position,
Right.
you'd reach out to Shannon or to Deborah, and they could put you on the calendar. So,
Or if you know someone or you have an idea for a topic, let us know. Because we want to give you what you need, not what we think you need.
This has grown. Katie started it with a small group. I did the second one. We had a room full. This one's even bigger.
This
So
is great. I taught the one.
there's something going on here.
And Ethan is teaching a class on social media on April 14th.
There we go.
Correct.
So that's another great opportunity to get a little bit more in depth about a few things that we
And if you don't
glanced
follow
over.
him, you should.
Yes.
Ethan Nagar, N-A-G-A-R, real estate. Yeah, April 14th, 9:30, 10:30, same time. Gonna teach people how to get noticed on social media. I had 2 buyers coming this spring just from social media. About 150 to 200 people see my Instagram stories every day, and it's totally free. So, that's something that you should use.
Talking about return on your investment, social
Yeah.
media is a really great thing that's free.
Totally free.
Little time.
So, I love to teach you guys.
Thank you all for coming. I hope I added some value to your business.